Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
So how do we plan to lend a hand to help Americans hold on to some form of sanity in 2024?
Before the last episode, I wanted to make one final point, and it has to do with...
I usually win when we play golf?
No, that's obvious.
Okay.
It has to do with the forming of 1850, whether it's what we thought we were forming or what God knew he was building and doing. But I remember being at the Mission Center, and I think at that point we basically had drywall, so you could see where the rooms and everything. Yeah. And then we went where the studio would be, and you were interviewing me, and I was just in town. I don't even remember what we were doing. I think we were just golfing, but we had an interview, and I remember as I was answering your question, how do you know God's voice? Does it conflate with our conscience? Is it separate from our conscience? I've never known how to explain that to somebody other than we have thoughts, millions of thoughts every day, and then every now and then a voice like a thought comes, and you're like, whoa, that wasn't me, or
this is bigger than me.
This was bigger than me. I didn't have this thought, and I couldn't bear witness that it was me. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Now, who the thought is from. But I remember describing this place is going to be a necessary safe haven, and soon. In other words, we just went through all of the polling numbers from Syracuse University of, a dying two-party system stranglehold, but a one-party media. Literally exactly. Now, Republicans are down to 3%. Yeah. So, and I thought, all right, that's one way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. I worked for a previous company that was very adversarial on three separate issues, very, very threatening on three separate issues. And I began to sense that when we talk about the intelligentsia elite at the university level or the control over our education system at the common education level, K through 12, or whether we're talking about media control or whether we're talking about technocracy control, whatever control we're talking about, I got the feeling that these major radio and television groups that we narrowed it down to 6 control everything you're watching.
Harvard University substantiated that massive study.
And when it comes to talk radio, about 3 control everything you're hearing. And I began to realize, oh, wait a minute. I think they have a seat at the table, at the cabal table, if you will, because I would get mandates before the mandate narratives came out in the media.
Yeah.
And this was before I even said, didn't happen until after I said what I said to you at the Mission Center. Now, we, just like we did last time, and we said, well, this is what we were thinking, and then this is what God was doing. So that's what I was thinking at the Mission Center. David, what you all have built here in the Cleveland area is going to be necessary because the last bastion of truth, talk radio, is about to be silenced from within, and it's going to need a protective place for the truth to speak and be safe speaking the truth. And it's interesting now as we enter a new year, I would say God has found that still in the Mission Center and the public square. What I would have never guessed is he found that safe place for me in the largest media group in the world, iHeart. Yeah, that's a faithful God. And when the enemy comes in like a flood, he just raises the standard against him.
This whole idea of not just finding a lane, and again, we're not talking about monetization. We're not talking about profit.
I think they've noticed there hasn't been a commercial on 1850.
Well, and if we have our way, there never will be. There's certain things you can't do if you're using different people's platforms. So, but our goal is we're not asking people to subscribe. We're not asking people for contributions. We're asking people to think and to share this with someone else for the simple reason that there's got to be a way to get the truth out.
If somebody felt led to bless me, not you, is that possible? No. Okay, good.
They maybe buy you a new driver.
I've always wanted to be that preacher that would say, if you send your prayer request in a $20 bill, David
stop.
and I.
Stop. We've got a history. Stop before that history gets unfolded. So in essence, this is also a voluntary thing. You and I do not draw paychecks from a company called 1850 Main Street. We've decided that we have an obligation to the listeners of the networks that we participate in to give them the opportunity to get behind the scenes. And the clocks that we work on, there's never enough time.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the backstage pass, if you will, on all of this. Okay, so and desire to become famous in the midst of all this. You know what? Fame is so dramatically overrated. I like radio.
We're too
a lot
old to
better.
get famous now,
Yeah,
so
we're
that's
too
off
old.
the
It's
tape.
not enough time for that. Okay, so first projection of trying to lend some help to the sanity factor in America in 2024. We're here now. We are into it. All the news is the primaries and the presidency. Okay, we knew it was coming. We've been trying to be prepared. We took a couple of days off over the holidays to try to be human again because we know what we're going to. We're walking into a food processor. We are literally going to be sliced and diced for the next 10 and a half months until this voting is done and over. But what we already see coming out of the gate on the very first stories of the new year, here's what I'm now going to call Amazon WAPO. That's the real meaning of the words Washington Post, right? Owned by Bezos, and the Washington Post organization is without a doubt a vehicle of a single opinion mechanism. They put up token opposition or token moderate other voices, but come on, if you read WAPO like we do every single day, man, it's as leftist. It's a tank going right down Main Street on leftism.
Well, the headline says it all.
Oh, doom dominates 2024 messaging as Trump and Biden trade dire warnings. Wait, there's a subtitle. Apocalyptic messages reflecting country's anxious mood could prompt convulsive reactions to the election results.
Wait, no, but you're laughing. Where
do you go from there?
Well, yeah, no. It's so. First of all, I sent you a separate article that it's just charts. And charts can't lie.
Well, unless they're COVID charts.
Well, yeah. Well, if they're COVID charts, and then we got to see the sewer system. But you know what I'm saying. The bottom line is things are not as bad as everyone's saying. They're trying to weaponize, and the right's doing it as much as the left,
yes,
and create the same fear and the same control and the same response for their gain. So it's a codependency you need to cut yourself off from, because these people are addicted to power and attention and fame and glory. But what's not funny is subtly in all of these, whether it's the far right or the far left, they are playing with Civil War language.
Yeah.
That part isn't funny, David. That is still my greatest concern for 2024, that the very first shots of a civil war aren't fired based on whoever wins, because that's the game and the stranglehold they have on the people playing this game. Well, and it needs to stop.
The problem with this is it's going to be fringe on both sides. We've already seen on the left, we've seen civil war in the streets. We've seen cops attacked, ambushed. We've seen agenda-driven organizations burning down things. And we've seen situations on the right where people have decided to try to, I'm careful because some of these things are still in litigation. So I want to be careful. But there was a group that was organized, infiltrated by the federal government, that was in the process of trying to come up with a plot to kidnap the Michigan governor. I mean, that's now substantiated in court records. I mean, this is nonsense. This is craziness on both sides. This is nuts. Let me explain something. In fact, no one listening to 1850 needs to hear this, because the people listening to this broadcast already get it. So we're not preaching to that choir. But let me just show you, like on the right, there's a website called Red State. Now, we have to understand something. There's lots and lots of media sites on both sides. There are large donation organizations, large foundations, large private investors that are investing in organizations on the right and the left to create fake news sites. There are fake news sites right and left. There are websites that make you think they're news organizations. They're not news organizations. They're 5 people working off of a kitchen table somewhere, taking in money from a big donor that they want you to think it's a news site. I mean, at least Drudge was honest. He was a news aggregator.
Right.
And because he was early in the game and did it really, really well, he was convenient. But he wasn't hiding anything. I mean, these people are trying to represent themselves as something that looks like Newsweek or something that looks like Time Magazine. Well, I'm not even saying those media outlets are credible, but at least they have history. They didn't just come off of somebody's table in the last 3 years because they got a donation. So there are websites on both sides. And I get, Michael, I don't know about you, but I have friends sending me this stuff constantly. I get exhausted trying to explain to them, check the source. I mean, who wrote this thing? Who paid to have it written? I don't care what theory they're coming up with and how much.
You don't know Nicarama?
Okay. So I get to the end of this article, as I do often in these things, And there's what, let's see if I can find that editor's note. All right. So here's the editor's note at the end of Red State. You get through their article. Here it is. Oh, editor's note. America won't survive another 4 years of a Democrat president. We must take back the White House. Well, hold on. Wait a second. This is supposed to be a conservative organization putting out this information. America won't survive another 4 years of a Democrat president. We must take back.
How disrespectful would your view of America,
Exactly.
our Constitution,
Our Declaration of
God,
Independence, yes,
our Declaration of Independence,
all of our
history, our
Yes.
military. What would your disrespectful opinion have to be to believe such a line?
To proffer that as something, and an editor's note from a position of moral integrity or clarity. What a bunch of
And this
baloney.
is the same probably, and by the way, I hear this, talk radio can be one of the least proud things in my life based on what it's become. But that's the kind of talk you hear on most talk stations now, unfortunately. Yeah. And these are the same people that would tell you, did you hear what Joe Biden said? That the greatest threat Trump poses is to our democracy, because if we lose everything. They would speak against that. But
Biden
then on the
said
other
that.
side of their mouth, they'll say that editor's note.
Biden said out loud, we lose everything. It's like, wow, hold it. Whoa. Timestamp that one. Joe, you lose everything if you're not president of the United States?
But then Trump says, as long as Joe Biden's in the White House, the American dream is dead. We have no future as long as he's there. I mean, they both play the same game.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
If we could get behind a closed door in a safe zone where people could say what they really want to say, my belief is an overwhelming majority of Americans would love to give both these candidates the heave-ho and their parties with them and come back to the Declaration of the Constitution in some form of personal responsibility. But we've been so conditioned. We've let ourselves be driven down this sewer line, and we're going to get an entire year of it. So right out of the chute, first time out, talking about 2024, whoever gets elected, if it's Biden or Trump, is only permitted to hold the office for 48 months. And after 24 months of that time,
They're lame ducks.
there are lame duck that will be practically meaningless. That's the first thing. They're not going to be able to take the Constitution off the wall or the Declaration out of our hearts in 48 months. That isn't going to happen. Number two, if we don't pay attention to what's happening in Congress, then we're the fools. Because if conservative thinking people, constitutional people come up from the bottom through the House of Representatives and the Senate, then we have a lot less to worry about in regards to who the president is.
So cutting to the chase, this type of rhetoric should be disqualifying for anybody if the American people's psyche was healthy, all right? But it's not, because we're divided. So what happens is those of you on the far left who are only watching the same shows and listening to the same shows and repeating and the same narratives and sharing the same stories from the same sites, you don't mind when your side does it, but you're appalled when the other side does. Now we go to the far right. You're watching your shows, listening to your shows, sharing your stories and narratives, and you don't like it when they do it, but you're okay when you do it. That's part of this problem, is the stranglehold of the two-party system that keeps us alive. And none of them are speaking to us and for us and about us. It's all about creating fear in you and momentum from them. It's about them. In other words, when Donald Trump makes comments like that, I would say, Mr. President, are you suggesting that if you're not elected president again, America is less than in any way? What does that say about him? So he thinks he is the way, the truth, and the life.
It
and
doesn't
I
work
don't
that
think
way.
any of them are. In
None
fact,
of it can't work that way. There's a constitution that won't let it work that way. And that's the reality. Now, the great news is most Americans don't buy this nonsense.
Well,
But I will tell you,
38% of each are supporting those two candidates. So.
there's a lot of good people who are so afraid to think outside the box, which would put you back into the zone of of a true Republican form of government, not a Republican Party, but a representative constitutional government. They're afraid to come out of the box that they've been shoved into and realize there's a whole nother world out here of history and law that we can live in and abide by, and we can elect people to the Congress to enact it. We can rebuild this country based on first principles all over again from the bottom up. But to do that, we've got to let go of the fear that somehow, if you don't do exactly what these siloed leaders are telling you to do, the world's going to come to an end. Guess what? It's not. It's not going to come to an end. And people that are mongering that kind of fear on both sides, it's time. You just got to laugh and walk away.
So if this was a movie, and you know how directors in movies will show you the bridge is fracturing, as the cars are crossing, because what you know is, oh, this thing's going to collapse, and who's going to be on the bridge when it collapses? They wouldn't be showing you that if it isn't going to start. The rocks are tumbling off. They get a close shot with a little sound effect of the rocks going. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so there's a fracturing in the Democrat Party with the Justice Democrats, the Squad, the extreme left. They're socialist. Their goal is to find vulnerable Democrats, take them out, take over the party, then get rid of the Electoral College, then dismantle the Republic. But their enemy number one is the Democrat Party. So they got little fractures in their bridge there. Then you've got some economically reasonable people that are, in the Democrat Party going, you can't spend your way out of a spending problem. You can't debt your way out of a debt problem. This anything goes is getting to be nonsensical. So we can't afford any more deficit, debt, or inflation. We have some economic common sense. And then there's a very small moral portion of the party that thinks they've gone way beyond their boundaries in parenthood and quite frankly, in life and morals. The Republican side is being fractured by this Trump-only crowd, then by the establishment. So, both these bridges are shaking and fracturing. Could somebody like a Robert Kennedy in 2024 time his way across the bridge perfectly as the two-party bridge collapses? Here's a guy talking commonsensically about us, not himself, about our Declaration of Independence, about our Constitution, about our history, about our future. Is it possible that may win the day?
Well, there's two questions. First question is Robert Kennedy Jr.? The second question is Robert Kennedy Jr. in this year? There's two questions. The question of, could an independent, well-reasoned candidate overthrow this dynamic hold that everyone is under? Yes, I think that's totally true. The system of our government permits it. If they're able to get their message out, it's possible. They may not be able to win in one step. It may take going to the Congress because the Electoral College is stuck in a tie or in less than a winner. So that's one thing. Could it happen in this year? Only God knows that.
Yeah, right.
Only God knows that. But is it technically possible? Yes. Is Kennedy in the race positive for the future health of our country? I think he is, because
I do too.
Because he's driving the question of the fact you don't have to be locked in this stranglehold. Now let's watch this year how many people from the right
and
the left condemn him because he threatens their control over the power.
Yeah, but you notice the difference? He is as abused, attacked, mistreated, and targeted as Donald Trump ever was, as Barack Obama never was, as Donald Trump ever was. The difference is he keeps showing up.
Yeah.
And he'll talk to anybody. Now, again, if he had the strong voice and didn't have the vocal cord neurological issues, it probably would be far more effective. But I just think, when we look back at how
and that,
Trump,
by the way, I want to let me kind of protect your back on that one. It's just because we're so in love with movie stars that if a person's got any form of physical challenge in their presentation, people don't have the patience to walk through that. It's like we don't want to vote a non-movie star candidate.
How about if I say it this way? He's far more eloquent, and his father was eloquent. He's far more eloquent than his father, and he's as close to as eloquent as his uncle. Yeah. It's just lost because of the physical limitation.
Yes.
He's
fascinating to listen to, whether you agree or not. He is. He's a serious thinker.
But if we look
things in life.
I have grown differently. In other words, right after 2016, I was so taken by the death of journalism, quite frankly, that it distracted me from Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, because that's what really was the overwhelming takeaway. I sensed immediately that there was an outsider election, that the voters themselves were predetermined to get away from incumbents and get outside of the party strangleholds then. I've grown more and more convinced that it probably had a lot to do with voting against Hillary more than voting for Donald Trump. So, but that's just how they played into the Trump hands, in that if they'd have had their outsider candidate, Bernie Sanders, which their party would have produced, that would have been an interesting election to watch. Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. We might be shocked. Bernie Sanders might have won. But there was an outsider referendum election that now we look back and we see a lot of anti-Hillary voting going on as well. This one, I think, it's starting to brew up again. Another outsider, and I don't know that the outsider is Donald Trump anymore. I think the outsider might be RFK.
If he's able to get his message out.
Yeah, brewing. And if these two parties continue with this kind of nonsensical, I mean, B-movie style doom and gloom sci-fi that we're reading every day, I can only speak for myself. There's only one candidate I'm legitimately considering voting for right now, and they're not a Republican or a Democrat.
So the strategy behind the consultants is this. They've decided all issues are off the table. 2024 is going to be nothing but B-grade, black and white movie, personality attacks, and who's the bigger threat to everything you believe in. It will be nothing but 24 hours of nonstop fear-mongering. Now, that's usually an attempt at voter suppression. In other words, my guy can't win, so I got to make sure your guy can't win either. That's what they're doing. And they're trying to drive the numbers down on the base of the other opponent, because they know they've only got a base that's big enough to survive by a miracle unless they take the other guy out. That's what this is about. But if they're going to run that process and there's a third guy out there who people are liable to say, I got a better idea, a pox on both your houses, just because I'm sick of you, I'm voting for him, that might turn out to be a big surprise.
Well, look at what we discussed the last time we were together. Deficit, debt, term limits, interest rates, inflation, division, death of journalism. These are the issues. These are the things that must be solved. They're just giving you two names. If you watch RFK, these are the things he focuses on for our good, not his good. He's already fine. I guess I would ask you, in what way could you possibly convince me that of all the things, because there's nothing we can be certain about in 2024, other than, my God, where he is in my heart and on his throne, but on earth, there's very little certainty to predict. But how could you convince me that RFK isn't the disruptive force of this election?
And I'm going to say it again. I'll say it again. We got to get out of this. We got to say it. It all depends on if he can get his message out.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.